11. It feels like I've only been asleep a couple of minutes when someone kicks my boots. I wake with a start and look up through the trees to the night sky. There's a half moon, and it casts just enough light to see through the bush. "Come on, we're moving," says Harry. Tusker and Jack are already ahead of us, two dark shapes weaving their way between the trees. "No blindfold now, son. Just try to keep up," Harry says before he turns his back and takes off. My pack has been left for me to carry, so I lift it onto my back and follow. It's pretty easy going at first. We stay on the flat mostly, trying to avoid the mimosa bushes that tear at our skin. The forest is different from the southern side of the ridge, taller with more manna gums and thinner undergrowth. I manage the pace, even though the pack is awkward to carry in the rougher terrain. I try to note landmarks along the way, rock outcrops on the ridge above or a particular fallen tree, but after a while I give up. I'd struggle to find my way back to the road. After 2 hours or so, the moon is higher and the forest has become thicker. The gullies are filled with fern trees too dense to get through, so we have to climb up and around each one as we come to them. I can hear the trickle of water hidden deep in the ferns. The ground is wetter too, and I lose my footing a couple of times. Only Harry shows any concern, calling a couple of times to ask if I'm okay. The moon eventually drops behind us and the forest darkens again. We've moved higher. The air is cooler and low clouds scud just above the treetops. A light rain starts to fall, enough to wet my clothes through to the skin. The pack's getting heavier, and my boots struggle to grip the damp forest floor. Without the moonlight, I trip more regularly, and my clothes are caked in mud. I lose all track of time, concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other. Ahead, I hear Harry's voice. "Not long now, son." That encouragement is all I need to keep going until the sky starts to lighten and the misty rain eases. We've started to head downhill. Every now and again I get a glimpse of an open valley below and it spurs me on. Anything to be out of the trees, anything to lie down and rest. As the forest starts to thin and the valley draws closer, I pick up the smell of smoke. I catch up to the other three, and they seem more relaxed now, striding out and talking among themselves. Harry drops back and we walk side by side for a few minutes. "We've been here 2 years, he says without looking at me, keeping ourselves out of sight. There are 15 of us. We grow what we need, wheat, barley, fodder for the cattle. The valley's cut off by the range at the high end, and there's a narrow entrance where the river cuts through at the other. We hunt up in the high country for strays gone wild and there's plenty of rabbits. When we drop below the tree line, the whole valley opens up in front of us. There are 4 houses and a cluster of outbuildings. Smoke drifts from the chimney to the nearest house, and I can see people moving about between the sheds. Harry cups his hands in front of his mouth and blows long and slow like the hooting of an owl. 2 figures, one tall and one short, appear on the veranda of the house with the smoking chimney. The smaller one starts running towards us. Harry chuckles. As the figure draws closer, I see it's a girl, blonde-haired, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She gets within 20 metres and stops, looking at me, then at Harry. "It's okay, Will," he says. "He won't hurt you." The girl runs to Harry, and he scoops her up and throws her over his shoulder. She squeals and wraps her arms around his neck. "Who's that, Daddy?" "Just a stray we picked up," Harry says, smiling. The girl drops to the ground and circles me warily. She looks healthy, well-fed. Her skin is clear and her hair is tied with a ribbon. Like her father's, her clothes are well cared for. "Hello," I say, and she laughs. "He talks funny. Why does he talk funny?" "Finn's been on his own for a while. Come on," Harry says. "I'm hungry." He leads us down the hill. Tusker and Jack have already disappeared into one of the other houses. The girl darts in and out of her father's legs, looking at me every now and again, still uncertain. "What's your name?" I ask, which makes her laugh again. But when Harry gives her a stern look, she says, "My name's Willow and I'm 8. "My name's Finn," I say, "and I'm 16, I think." People have begun to appear out the front of the first house, crowding onto the veranda. Jack and Tusker stand with their arms folded across their chests. I count another 8 people, adults and children. At least 2 of them are girls, and there's a woman at the front drying her hands on the side of her jeans. She's the first to talk, and her voice reminds me of Mum's. "Well, well," she says, "look what the cat dragged in." She walks around me, checking me from every angle. "You certain about him?" she says to Harry. "He's got no signs of the virus still. He's made of pretty tough stuff, I reckon. Been on his own for 2 winters down on the coast. It didn't seem right to leave him out there, with Ramage on the hunt." Tusker and Jack must have told the others what had happened. "He needs a haircut and a good wash," the woman says, with a small smile. "Scrawny bugger. What have you got to say for yourself, young man?" I don't know what to say. I'm embarrassed with everyone looking at me, and I'm afraid they'll laugh when they hear my voice. I look at the ground and run my hand back through my hair. "All right, everyone," Harry says. "Go easy on the boy. No need to interrogate him just yet. We need a good feed. Let's get inside. The rest of you back to work. We'll have a meeting tonight." They all head off towards the other houses, though a couple of the young ones look back over their shoulders, checking me out. Willow stands next to me, looking up. "You're tall," she says. "You're short," I say. "We got porridge," she says, and skips to the door. I look back at Harry. The woman is hugging him, her feet almost lifting off the ground in an effort to get her arms around his neck. He winks at me and says, "Hungry, Finn?" Inside, the house is warm and dry. It has that lived-in feel that family homes have, with cushions on a long couch, photos on the walls, and something I haven't seen in years, Lego, strewn across the lounge room floor. There's a wood stove in the kitchen with a bubbling pot on top. Stella spoons porridge into 2 bowls, and the steam rises to her face. Harry nods towards a chair at the kitchen table, and I sit down. Willow sits next to me. "Do they call you thin because you're so skinny?" she asks. "It's not thin, it's Finn." I laugh, drawing out the F. The porridge is hot and sweet. I can taste milk in it. Mine's half gone before I realise no one else has started. "We say grace here, Finn," Stella says. I put my spoon down quietly. Harry places his hand in Stella's and reaches across to hold mine. Next to me, Willow completes the circle. "Lord," says Harry, "bless this food and those who share it. Guide us in these troubled times and keep us safe from privation. Amen." "Amen," I say. "We think it's important that we hold to our faith, especially now," Stella says. I can only nod. I think about the church people in Angari when the virus hit. They tried to help the sick, but they just got the disease themselves and died. By the time I'm finished my porridge, I'm so tired I can hardly hold the spoon. The long night has caught up with me, and I'm thinking of sleep. "There's a bed through that door there," Harry says, pointing behind me. "And the washroom is out the back. There'll only be cold water at such short notice, but Stella won't let you get between clean sheets without you having a good wash first. Once you've rested, we'll work out what we're going to do with you. There's plenty of work to be done on the farm." I'm too tired to argue that I didn't come with Harry to be put to work on his farm. I need to find Kaz and get back to Rose. "There'll be a community meeting tonight where everyone has a vote," he says. "We're a collective here. Others will have their say too." The washroom has a concrete floor, and there is a trough with cold water and a bucket. I strip off, tip a bucket of water over my head, and use some soap that's hard as wax to wash myself. My legs and arms are covered with scratches, but I scrub myself clean and dab the cuts dry. The kitchen is empty when I walk back through. The porridge bowls are stacked on the bench, and the shelves are lined with jars of dried flowers and herbs. I close my eyes and breathe in the smell of people. The smell of a home. Harry wasn't joking. There are clean sheets on the bed. I feel a bit guilty, but I slide in and my head barely hits the pillow before I'm asleep. The day is almost over when I wake. There are fresh clothes hanging on the end of the bed. They're a bit big for me, but at least they're dry. Outside, the sun has dropped below the ridge to the west, and the whole valley is in shadow. There are 3 figures walking up to the house, tools carried across their shoulders. They're too far away to make out, but I guess one of them is Harry from his height and the way he walks. As they draw closer, the other 2 peel off towards the sheds. Harry leans his tools, a hoe and an axe, on the side of the veranda and comes inside. "We'd best be getting ready for that meeting, son," he says. The meeting takes place in a communal hall lit by spirit lamps. There's an inner circle of 6 chairs and an outer one of 10. Half a dozen figures are already sitting in the inner circle. It takes a while for my eyes to adjust to the light, but slowly I make out 5 men and a woman, ranging in age from about 15 to 40. Harry sits in the inner circle. Stella guides me to a chair behind him, then sits down next to Harry. Eventually the chairs fill. Each person seems to have their own place, but it's too dark to see everyone properly. Harry is the first to speak. "May the Lord guide and direct us in our decisions tonight," he says, "and in his mercy help us to do what is right for our community." This is followed by a muffled "Amen" from the others. Harry leans forward in his chair and sits his palms flat on his thighs. He gets straight to the point. "As you know, Jack Wilson, Peter Tusker and myself have spent the last couple of days in the forest. We travelled as far as the coast road at Pinchgut Junction, where we came across the boy, Finn. Stand up, lad," he says. I get to my feet, and small conversations break out around the circle. Righto, Harry says. "The lad says he's been living rough in the bush down by the coast, and that he's on the run from Ramage and his men. He tells us he's looking for someone. A girl." Everyone laughs, and I hear a deep voice call out, Aren't we all? Harry waves his hand and they fall silent. "Anyways," he says, "we brought him back here because we can always do with an extra hand on the farm, if he chooses to stay. If he survived on his own for this long, he must be pretty tough, and a good hunter. So," he says, more seriously, "we need to decide whether we welcome the boy into our community or let him go." This isn't what I was expecting. Tusker is sitting in the inner circle opposite Harry and Stella, and he waits for quiet before he speaks. The low light makes his scar look sinister. Curling up his lip on one side, his eyes move around the group. "It wasn't my idea to bring him back here," he says. "The boy's story doesn't add up. He says he's running from Ramage, but he's heading north. Says he's been living rough, but he doesn't look like he has. How do we know he ain't with Ramage? Finding out where we are and leading him back here. I say we keep him here under lock and key if we have to. The community comes first, we can't take risks." Harry's voice rises again. "Finn says he had a run-in with Ramage before he left the coast. Says he nearly killed him. Knocked him off his trail bike. That's why he was being chased." "Sounds like bullshit to me. Just another story he's making up," Tusker says. "There's something else he's told me." Harry pauses before going on. "Finn claims there's another boy down on the coast who's got a sister called Kaz. Finn's trying to find her to take her back to her brother. The girl's got a birthmark on her face." This last bit of information kills all the sound in the room, and everyone turns to the back row opposite me. A girl stands up, and as the light hits her face, I see the red birthmark running down the left-hand side. Even in the dull light, I can see her skin is as brown as roses. Her hair is pulled back, and her eyes shine in the lamplight. Harry speaks. His voice is deep, grave. "Kashmala, do you know this boy? Have you ever seen him before?" The girl clears her throat. "No. I've never seen him before. Not around Longley. And," she pauses for effect, "I've got no brother." The room erupts again. I can hear Tusker's voice rising above the others. "I told you," he says. "I told you he was a fucking liar." Harry waits for quiet again, then addresses Tusker. "I'll ask you to mind your tongue. Tusker smirks and looks away. Harry turns back to Kaz and says, "Are you sure, girl? Come over here and have a closer look at him." She walks slowly around the outer circle until she is next to me. While everyone is watching her, I slip the leather strap with the ring from around my neck and hide it in my hand. Kaz has the same dark eyes as Rose, but her face is leaner, longer, and she's a good 6 inches taller than her sister. She shakes her head. "No, I've never seen him before," she says again. Her accent is as strong as Rose's. It's darker over where I've been sitting, so while more anxious conversations break out around the room, I reach out and grab Kaz by the wrists and push the ring into her palm. I'm close enough to see her eyes widen as she feels it in her palm, but she says nothing. I hold her gaze and give her the slightest of nods. "All right, Cashmala, you can sit down again now," Harry says. He looks at me like a disappointed father. "Sit down, Finn," he says, turning away. Tusker is on his feet. The others are staring at him, seeming to urge him on. "I don't know why we're having this conversation, Harry. The girl's a Siley, she's got no rights. She's our property now. And if Ramage ever finds the valley, we can use her to trade. The boys lied to us from the start. We can't risk letting him go and him leading Ramage back here." The others nod and grunt in agreement. "The lad's done nothing wrong," says Harry, above the noise of the room. "I don't know why he's made up the story about the girl's brother, but he's seen her somewhere before. Otherwise, how would he know about her birthmark?" "Come on, Harry, think about it. We know the girl's a runaway. This just proves the boy's working with Ramage. He's from Longley too, and he was heading back there when we caught him. I say we keep them both here and have them work alongside the rest of us." "They're no one's property, Tusker. They're God's children." "Not everyone shares your faith, Harry," says Tusker. "I don't care whose children they are. They'll stay here and they'll work and they'll feel my whip if they don't." The others are cheering and clapping now. As they push forward to pat Tusker on the back, I get a clear view of Kaz. Looking straight at me, she brings her hand up to her face, and I see the ring glint in the lamplight. "It doesn't matter who they are, Tusker," Harry says. "We've got an obligation to treat them kindly. They're just kids. Where's your humanity?" "I lost my humanity when my wife and kids died. Where was your merciful God then?" "You know how sorry I am for your loss. I lost a daughter too." "Sorry? Bullshit, Harry. You were lucky. You got a wife to keep you warm at night and another daughter." "You can't blame me for that," Harry says. "I'm not blaming you. But we're coming at this current situation from different angles. The girl's old enough to have children. That's about all Sileys are good for. That and work in the fields. If they wanted otherwise, they shouldn't have come to this country in the first place." Stella cuts in then. "They were children, Tusker. Children. They had no say in where their parents brought them." "More bullshit," Tusker says. "Besides, everyone knows they brought the virus." Stella sits up straight. I can feel her anger from here. "There's never been any proof of that, Tusker, and you know it. That's not worth wasting our breath on now. We got a problem here and we have to solve it. And we reckon," he says, looking around the chairs on his side of the room, "we reckon it's too dangerous to let the boy go." The others all nod in agreement, and more noise breaks out around the room. Harry whispers something to Stella before facing the others again. "We've got no problem with them staying in the valley. But let them grow up, help work on the farm, and when they're old enough, choose their own partners. Stella and I will take them in. We've got room." Harry's voice is measured, calm. The younger men on Tusker's side seem to be swayed by his authority, but Tusker is shaking his head. "Why should you take them in? You got a wife. You got a daughter. We don't have enough women here and we have to think about the future. It's a pity she's so ugly." The others around Tusker laugh and I feel the balance shift back to their side of the room. But Tusker has barely finished his sentence when Kaz launches from her seat. She's on his back in an instant, raining blows down on his head. Everyone seems to freeze, too stunned to move. Tusker is a big man and Kaz's punches just glance off him. As he brings his arms up to grab her, she leans in close. He lets out a yelp and hurls her across the floor like a rag doll. His hand goes to his ear and I can see blood trickling through his cupped fingers. He brings his hands to the front of his face. "You fucking bitch!" he yells, jumping to his feet and standing over her. He raises his fist to hit her, but before he can land a punch, two things happen at once. Harry grabs his raised arm and Kaz directs a kick into his crutch. Tusker reels back in pain, as everyone in the room seems to dive into the heap of arms and legs and bodies. I take hold of Kaz's hand and drag her away from the fight. I think she might be unconscious, but once I get her to clear space behind where I was sitting, she opens her eyes and stares at me. "Where did you get the ring?" she whispers. "From Rose." "Where is she?" "She's safe," I say, as slow and clear as I can. "In Ngari down the coast. I'm going back to her. Are you with me?" She doesn't get the chance to answer. A big hand grabs her by the arm and drags her back to the other side of the room. A couple of the older men have pulled the fighters apart, and some calm descends on the room. A man I'd heard them call Simo stands between the two groups, an arm outstretched to each. "Righto, that'll do," he says. "Back off, everyone." People start taking their seats again. No one seems to be hurt apart from Tusker, who has one hand between his legs rubbing his balls and the other trying to stem the flow of blood from his ear. I can see a flap of skin hanging off the top where Kaz has bitten him. "All right," Simo says. "We all agree the boy and the Siley stay here in the valley. It's too much of a risk to let them go. Unless we want to lock them up, they need to stay with someone. I say we separate them. The boy can stay with Harry and Stella, and the girl with Rachel and me." Everyone turns to the woman who's been sitting next to Kaz through the meeting. She must be Rachel. It seems like there's agreement on this, going by the nodding heads and the grunts of approval. Rachel takes Kaz by the shoulders and marches her to the door. Kaz swings around and looks right at me. "Finn," she calls across the room. "The answer's yes,"